Righty then. Welcome back to the channel. This is Julio here. Um, with the reports coming out about Marcus Rashford being up for sale, it looks very like it's looking like it's been coming for a while, and it looks like it's actually going to happen. Um, and it's quite a disappointing day because regardless of whether you were in or out of your mind, whatever, in terms of whether you wanted Rashford to stay or go. Um, it's disappointing it's turned out like this for a player um, who we all saw break onto the scene as this wonder kid, and there was these expectations that maybe he'll be here for the whole of his career. He might break Wayne Rooney's goal record, for example. There was a lot on about Marcus Rashford, and it's quite sad to see what looked like for some time a beacon of what Man United was all about. You know, the player that represented the fans in a way, living the dream that we all couldn't. Um, it's disappointed it's turned out this way, but I think when it's gone on for so long and a lot of doubts and a lot of questions and just everything around it, unfortunately, I think maybe it is for the best if he goes, because I've already done a video on this, but I'll briefly touch on this part again because it's quite relevant. Um, I think when you've got a football player who isn't playing up to the standards he's set on himself with his career so far, and when he doesn't look happy playing football, and you've got a board in place who have just appointed a new manager, they're trying to make sure all the way through that everyone is on the same page about turning this into a successful footballing institution again. Unfortunately, players can't be carried to that. You all have to get stuck in and work on yourself if you have to. And unfortunately, we're not getting value for money on Marcus Rashford's wages. And if he doesn't want to be here anymore, and if it's just not working and he doesn't fit in, then maybe it is best if Rashford goes, for himself and for Man United. I know he obviously loves the club, but just doesn't look happy. And let's not forget, there's been games this season when he's gotten goals or scored assists, whatever, and he's still not looked as happy as he has done in the past with that smile on his face. So unfortunately, it's come to this, and unfortunately, we're now in a position where we're looking to move on what could be considered maybe a franchise player, an MVP, that kind of player, and obviously it will be tough to replace him in some way, but maybe maybe we shouldn't be looking to replace Marcus Rashford. We should be looking to find the appropriate player to play in the team in that position that will get the best out of that said player, whoever comes in. And I do wonder whether fans will look at it that way, or they'll look at simply saying, we're going to replace someone who's given us these goals, these assists, these numbers, these whatever. And are we going to get another franchise player? I don't know. I don't know if the board will facilitate a move for a big name. And I think it's very dependent on who is on the list and who fits the role. Now, I've conducted a list of 6 players who I think would be maybe best fitted to come in on the back of Rashford leaving. If he leaves anytime soon. I don't think these happen in January. I don't know if he might leave in January. I'm not sure. There might be a sneaky suspicion that we won't see him until he leaves. But then obviously you question what kind of suitors there are for him. And I think with the suitors potentially out there, I think, does it come down to wages? Does it come down to, do clubs want to spend in January? Does it come down to off the pitch stuff? Does it come down to what he's been like on the pitch? But that aside, I think it's important that we consider carefully who comes in. And I personally don't think we go like for like. And what I mean by that is, for example, there will be players on this list that people don't agree with, that people agree with, and there'll be players missing from this list, and people will think, well, hang on, why isn't this on the list? For example, I don't believe Rafael Leao is a good replacement for Rashford. Yes, like for like he is, but Marcus Rashford has enough narratives around him about, oh, he's apparently lazy, he doesn't track back, he only gets numbers and that's it. He's only had one good season. Some of those narratives aren't true. Like the one good season in 9 is not correct. It's proven statistically that Marcus Rashford has had a lot of good seasons and just had 2 bad seasons in 9, maybe excluding this season. Rafael Leao, however, as much as I like what he offers on the table, I don't think he's the one. I think he fits those narratives a lot better than Marcus Rashford, and I think it would be silly to replace someone who we deem as lazy, who isn't consistent, who scores goals and doesn't do much else, like off the ball or tactically or technically or whatever. It would be wrong to what we consider Marcus Rashford to replace him with a player that ticks those boxes as well. But yeah, so I've got 6 players here who I think would be very good fits. There are, links, there are rumors, there are even some names that maybe there haven't really been any murmurs about. So let's dive in. The first one I've gone for is Matheus Cunha from Wolves. The reason I picked him is from a footballing and a business perspective. So from the business perspective, Personally, I think Wolves are still down, even with their appointment of Vitor Pereira. And I think Vitor Pereira leaves at the end of the season, maybe even regardless of what happens. And I think Matheus Cunha going down with Wolves, he's been one of their shining lights in a very dim season for them. Bottom of the league, not playing very well. Gary O'Neill's just left. Obviously, it means something's going wrong if a manager gets sacked around December time. And to be that, I believe he was in Team of the Month for November as well. And doing that whilst at a team at the bottom of the league, it means you're doing something right, to put it simply. And I think with Wolves going down, I think it puts something in place of a really good deal to happen. And I don't think Cunha's the only one this can be done with at Wolves, but for me, I think that's for another video looking at another position. And I personally think if Wolves go down, Cunha's there for the taking for about 35 million quid, give or take. Whether Wolves be taking a loss or whatever, it doesn't matter to me what price tags he's had in the past. I think he's been very good, and I don't think Wolves would be in a position to negotiate for a higher price of a 50 or a 60, as good as he has been. If Wolves stay up, I think they're more than entitled to, given what the market is. But I think with the way United are looking to spend money, they're looking to be more methodical with their signings. That's not to say they won't spend big money, because of course you'll spend big money. But I don't think we'll be seeing 80 million pound strikers, unless it's an absolute world beater like a Victor Gyökeres, for example. But I think from a footballing perspective, Matheus Cunha would be a very good option, because throughout his career, even at Wolves, he's played anywhere across the front line and even behind the striker in the 10 position. And in the way Amorim operates his 3-4-2-1, I think Cunha offers a really good and different dynamic to other players in that team, where he'd be really good. I think the best of him would be in one of those attacking midfield positions, in the 2 behind the 1. I think here he'd be expected to contribute to both scoring and creating goals, leveraging his strengths, like his dribbling, his pace, and even finishing. He's proving to be quite prolific for Wolves since he's been there. And what he offers as well is he's been really good creatively as well. He's offered a lot of creativity, and I think it aligns with the dynamic and the versatility that Amorim wants in that kind of, in his system. But even if he plays as a striker, attributes like his attacking drive, his speed, and his ability to link up play, I think makes him a very interesting option for the team, because what you've got a more of a dynamic and fluid number 9. It almost reminds me of Jota when Liverpool signed him, because obviously they signed him off the back of a European chasing Wolves side. And I'm not saying they're the same player, but Jota played across the front line for Wolves, whether it was in a two up front or in a 3-man forward line. He played across there, got goals, got assists. And then when he went to Liverpool, granted under Klopp it was a different system slightly, but he operated alongside across that front line, and he went up to another level. His goals became more frequent. He became more of a goal scoring threat, and he was still very fluid and good in that forward line. And I think Cunha would offer something similar. I don't know whether he goes and starts smashing in the goals, but in a fully fledged, Amorim vision, Cunha might be that, at least as a very good option off the bench or even in the starting 11. And I think the other thing that's really impressed me, because it's the fact that since he's been as a striker or a centre forward at Wolves, from what I've seen, he's shown that he can handle the physicality and the tactical demands of the Premier League. And it would be beneficial in Amorim's system because of, often, what Amorim wants his forwards to press high and participate in build-up play. And he's very good at linking up play from that central position. So, of course, fitting into Amorim's system obviously would depend on, how the players evolve. And maybe by the time the summer comes around, Amorim feels he's got enough options in those 10 positions, and even in the striker position. But I think looking at his skill set, I think Cunha would be a good signing. Whether he's the main guy further down the line, I don't know. It would depend on how he comes in and how he evolves. He's not really played for top clubs. He's played for Leipzig. He's played for Atletico Madrid. He's moved about a little bit, but I think it would be a very good value for money signing, and I think it would be worth Man United going in for, especially if you look into, especially if you're not finishing in the places you wanna and you're being limited budget wise. I think it's worth pursuing that deal. I think it's there for the taking. So number 2 is, this one's an interesting one. So I've gone for Bryan Mbeumo. Offer something a little bit different. The reason I think it's a little bit interesting, this one, because I think he'd cost about 50-60 million pounds, and I like Bryan Mbeumo, and obviously he operates more on the right hand side for Brentford, and there's been times where he's operated through the middle, which it's a nice option to have, but you don't really want to keep buying these hybrid players. You want players, because a lot of times we've bought players thinking they're for one position over the years, and it turns out we're buying them and they actually don't play that well. They say they prefer the other side, signing Jadon Sancho to be a right winger, for instance, and he turns around and goes, I'm better on the left. And I know Bryan Mbeumo doesn't often play, he's best suited on the right hand side, but this is coming from a position where, I think because he's got such fluidity in the attack, Ruben Amorim, I think it doesn't necessarily have to be the shadow striker role on the left and the playmaker on the right. I think you can swap the two, have Mbeumo as an inside forward in a way, that kind of shadow striker role even. And I think playing off the right, you've still got Bruno Fernandes who can operate the left as a playmaker really well. Even other players can operate that role quite well. And I think what Mbeumo's shown since he's been at the club, he's quick, he's got good dribbling, and he's proven to be a goal scorer when Ivan Toney's not been around. When Toney first got banned, Mbeumo seemed to turn up and score a lot of goals. And then the same this season with Wisa, they seem to have turned up for Brentford, and their goals seem to be the difference. And I think if you're buying from a Thomas Frank team, I think it's I don't think it's ever a bad idea. He's got work rate, he's really good at pressing from the front, and like I said, his goal scoring ability, I think would be crucial in that area. And even if you wanted a false 9 as a striker, you wanted a false 9 kind of that kind of role in the striker, I think Mbeumo operates like that as well. And I think him also being Premier League proven for three years coming into a fourth season now. I think it's more than it's not a gamble. It's almost a dead cert to do well. The only issue I've got is I actually think you'd be perfect at Liverpool to replace Mohamed Salah. I think he'd be the perfect. I think he'd be the perfect replacement for Salah. You know, he's very direct, and a lot of these other things I think would help him fit in there as well. But you know, if there is another name on this list who I think Liverpool are actively pursuing a lot more. Um, but I think if Liverpool get that other option, I think Mbeumo should be one to take, because I think one key thing is people are, you know, saying that you miss out on Rashford's goals, but I think you put Mbeumo in this team, I think you make up for that. And Mbeumo strikes me as that kind of player who would go into a better team like United, and we'd see him go to another level, kind of like Mane when he went to Liverpool. Um, so I think this one would be another good option to have. I mean, if United go for both of them, I think it would be really good. I would understand the sentiment about, you know, what if you're limiting Ahmad's progression maybe into the first team, because obviously at the moment Ahmad Diallo is the one shining light, it seems. But if you want to win stuff, if you want to be the best team, you need squad depth, and I think to have those kind of options where Amad Diallo and Mbeumo can play there, they each offer something different. They each offer something a little bit different. And I think having that more proven option in Mbeumo, and I think he would cost about £60 million, give or take. I don't think that's actually a bad deal. So for a Prem proven player who's consistently actually scored goals for a good amount of time. So I mean, I personally think he's a better fit at Liverpool, but if Liverpool was stupid enough to not get him, in my opinion, I don't see why United shouldn't. So the next option I've got is a bit different now, and this is where we go into one of the more expensive options and one of the more franchise signings, should I say, and that's Kvaratskhelia from Napoli. I really like him. I really like him a lot. I think what's impressed me about him is the fact that he's come from this kind of humble kind of footballing career, and he's gone to Napoli, and he's excelled there, and he's shown what he's about there. And I think he would be really, I think he would fit really well in what the position that Rashford's been taking up. And I think what he offers better over what Rashford has is I think he's better on the ball than Marcus Rashford. And I think in terms of taking players on, I think he'd be really good. Obviously, he's quite tall. He's got quite a good build, but he's still got a good flair, a good bit of flair and pace about him. And you know, he's got the ability to cut inside, take on defenders, deliver key passes, and he's got goals in him. He's got goals in him, and I think he does. I think what's good is the fact that he does have that bit of creativity about him, and I think he's got very good close control, you know, especially in tight spaces. And I just think that in build-up play and linking midfield with the attack, I think he'd be a lot better. And especially with the way that Amorim operates with a shadow striker, I think he would be that kind of a good franchise replacement. I know people will say, well, hang on, he might not be better than Rashford, but I just think that, I think mentality-wise, I think he'd be a really good fit for the team. And what impresses me about him is the most is when it comes to expectation, I think he handles it well, because, and I say this because of what he's been like at the international level. I think, you know, I always appreciate top players who turn up on the international stage and not almost single-handedly, even maybe almost, but I don't want to say not to take credit away. But obviously, Georgia reached the knockout stages of the Euros last summer, and I think he was a big part to play for that. And it reminds me of when Gareth Bale was with Wales. Now, I'm not trying to take away the team performances, the team dynamics of those two countries when they're at their peak, because you know Gareth Bale alone didn't make Wales good. He obviously performed in big moments. He turned up for the big occasions. But obviously the rest of the team around him did their jobs as well. And I think it was the same for Georgia. But having that kind of weight and expectation of being the main guy for your country, and because you see for Norway, you see for Egypt, you see for a lot of these countries, the big players, you see them not turn up in tournaments or not reach tournaments. And I feel like Kvaratskhelia actually turns up for his country, and I find that really impressive because it shows that with that kind of expectation, he has what it takes to lead from the front. And I feel like at a club as big as Man United, it might not be the same, but it's something worth considering. Um, my only issue with him is the price tag. I mean, he's playing for Antonio Conte right now, and he's been doing well for Napoli, and I think they seem to value him around 100 million pounds. So I just worry about that price tag, or whether we can get him to come down from that. Whether we offer play, I don't know, but I personally think if the board go big on a Rashford replacement, I think he's the one they go big on. Obviously he's not prem proven like Mbeumo and like Cunha, but I don't think you can go wrong. And I think if United sell Mason Mount as well and the 7 shirt becomes free, I think he would relish that challenge. I know some people will say it's a shirt number and some people will say it's sacred and you have to earn it, but I do think that he could play a year without it, and I think he might warrant it, and I think he would relish that challenge when it comes. So I really think he's a good option as well, but I just worry about the price tag, especially if we're looking to invest in other positions as well. Next one. This is the one I mentioned earlier, Mohammed Kudus. Now, I think Liverpool are going to go in for this guy, and he's actually been really good for West Ham since he's joined. Last year, I think he got 18 goals. For a winger, that's pretty good, and I think he got a good number of assists as well. And I think what he offers, and he operates a lot more on. He can operate on the left, can operate in the middle, but operates a lot more on the right, similar to Mbeumo in a way. But I think what he offers else is, I think he would actually be good as a wing back as well. I think he would contribute well defensively as that kind of defensive winger role. We've seen Anthony do okay at wing back. We've seen Ahmad do good at wing back as well. And I feel like you'd see that from Kudus as well. And I think he offers that versatility where he can play either on the right wing or, well, I say right wing, that right 10, or even that as a right wing back. And, he's a very good dribbler, goal scoring threat again. And I think seeing that rotation, and I think being from the school of Ajax, I think, Ajax don't sign mugs. I know we laugh at Anthony and the fact that he used to play for Ajax and how good, and he looked good there and whatever, but Ajax don't just sign anyone. And, you cannot tell me that Anthony didn't look good at Ajax. And I think what he offers as well is tactical. I think what you can get with him, with Kudus, is you can enhance tactical flexibility in the system. Hence why I think he could come good in that wing back role. And I think with the way Amorim offers a fluid front line, I think Kudus would thrive in that as well. For me, another thing that troubles is the price tag. It's another option where it's prem proven, but you're paying a lot more money. Now I know you get he's prem proven. There's various tactical scenarios where he can come good, whether it be in terms of adapting to whether the opponent, adapting in big games to depending on the opponent, whatever. I think he suits you're looking for versatile, hard-working attackers. I think he suits that as well. But with the release clause coming into effect in the summer, and I think with Liverpool going in for him as well, it'll either be a case of you have to beat them to it, or maybe you latch onto someone else that maybe they should have got instead. It really depends, obviously, what the board look at, and the board might opt for more value for money signings, where you might get Mbeumo for £25 million less, and you get the same level of output out of him. Maybe not the same kind of versatility, but it's still there. So yeah, it's still another worthy option to have. I mean, I was surprised when we signed Anthony in the first place over Kudus, because I watched Ajax and I personally preferred Kudus, even though Anthony played a lot more than him at Ajax. But when I saw Ten Hag opting for Anthony, I thought, well, this guy knows the pair of them. Surely his talent ID would be better than mine, and he would say, I know this guy. I know what he can do. I know he's better for what I want. So yeah. But I think Kudus is an option worth considering. Definitely, he will definitely be on a list. The next one kind of falls back into what we were under Ten Hag. I don't want us to be Sporting 2.0, similar to what we were with Ten Hag, where Ajax 2.0. But I've gone for Pedro Goncalves here because Amorim, knowing him and knowing he can play, he's already played the Amorim system. He knows the role well. He's played the shadow striker role, has proved that he's good at it as well. So I think it's an option worth considering, and I don't think it'd be too expensive either. And I think he'd be a direct replacement, whether it be for someone more creative in the playmaker role or even as the shadow striker role. And I think he can even complement other players like Bruno Fernandes. We've seen Bruno Fernandes play deeper. We've seen him adapt to roles Amorim has given him. And I can see that with Pedro Goncalves. I think Goncalves can even find a way to play in midfield if necessary, depending on the opponent, what he offers. But I think optimally, I think you'd see him in one of the two behind the strikers. And I think what he would do, that he'd be mirroring what he did at Sporting. Don't want us to keep buying players that the manager knew previously, but I also think it's always a strength to have, whether it be through the agency or whatever. I think it's worth a manager knowing a player, because obviously we've got a board now where it seems we can we still need a new person to replace Dan Ashworth, but I think it's always worth if a manager knows what you're about, if a manager knows what you're like mentally, and if you're a good enough fit and if you're the right kind of player to have in a dressing room. I think it's worth. And he's cheap. I think he'd be cheap. I don't think he'd cost more than 45 million. So I think the familiarity really helps and makes it value for money. And we've seen over the years players come from Portugal and they fit in the Premier League tactically and physically. So I think it's worth considering that one. Now, the last one is it's something we've seen come out recently, and he's a player that I really like, which is Nico Williams. I really like Nico Williams. I like what he offers. Obviously, we saw him at the Euros, how good he was on the wings with Lamine Yamal for Spain, and comes home with a medal around his neck. Now, whether he plays as one of those offensive wing backs, I'm not entirely sure, because obviously the role requires defensive awareness. Whether Nico Williams offers that, I'm not entirely sure. I think he'd be good in playing as a winger, but I think what would come with Nico Williams would be adaptation. I think he's more of a winger than Rashford is, but whether he can operate in that, in that 10 for Amorim is interesting, because I think there will be there needs to be an adjustment in the system. I think he naturally plays on the wing. Playing as a wing back, he could be well utilized there because it's natural for him to be that wide, but I think he'd have to adapt to the role of that and having defensive contributions as well as offensive contributions. But you cannot deny that for a £48 million release clause, there is a really good skill set, especially with his pace and his dribbling. And I think it would be a major asset. He offers something a bit more dynamic than what Rashford has in that regard. There is obviously talk about Barcelona wanting him as well, but you know what Barcelona's finances are like. We don't know what's going to happen in that regard. Barcelona's finances are one of the most interesting things ever, and I'd love to personally look into them and see how they're just affording all these players and whatnot. But I think Nico Williams would be one of all the options I've listed. I think Nico Williams would be one of the options where we need to see more development, more adaptation, and I think if you've got a set system, I think you have to buy players where they fit naturally, because there is no guarantee that, saying a player could play there is one thing, but them actually doing it, like Ten Hag brought Mason Mount in, he fought tooth and nail to get Mason Mount in, and wanted to operate him in a midfield with Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro, and for what Ten Hag's tactics were, it just didn't seem to work. So I just think that, in conclusion, I think you have to go like for like. If I was to go for a big money signing, I think for me it would be Kvaratskhelia. If it's not a big money signing, I don't think they should limit to. I don't think United should limit to the role being on the left-hand side of, shadow striker. I think it would be wise to go for a good value for money signing because let's not forget, Marcus Rashford is arguably the best goal scorer and outlet in the team, regardless of how he's been this season. When you look at him and you think on paper whose goals can make a difference, I think you'd put Marcus Rashford in that regard. It's why people suggest maybe he should play as a striker. So I think that in that regard, maybe you go for an Mbeumo, maybe, or a Cunha, or a Kvaratskhelia. I think for me, those three names would be the best signings. I think Pedro Goncalves should be considered, but I personally don't want to see us buying players, no matter how familiar they are, to Amorim's system. I don't want to see him just signing all of his guys. I don't want us to become Sporting 2.0. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the situation. If anyone watching, let me know what you think on that. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. I've got videos up already. I've given my opinions on the Rashford situation. There's also the Adam Matic interview where I really enjoyed speaking to him. But for now, take it easy, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. So, laters.